Hey friends, how you doing there? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Win at life. Today we're studying Daf Samach Vav, Daf 66 of Masechta Ksubis. Friends, today we start the sixth parak of Masechta Ksubis. Alright, what do you want me to tell you? It's more stuff about the Ksuba and things like that. There's some hard parts, but we learned Yevomis. Friends, alright, we're going to start at the beginning of the parak. So things that a wife finds or makes goes to her husband. And when it comes to her inheritance, that if she inherits stuff, so that would be considered to be nichsei melug, property that belonged to her, but that her husband is entitled to eat from the fruits of the property. He can consume those fruits during their marriage. Now, if she ever gets embarrassed or damaged in some kind of a way, injured in some kind of a way, so then she receives those payments. Well, if she gets damaged or embarrassed in some hidden way, well then she receives 2/3 of the payment and he receives 1/3. But if it is in a revealed way, and therefore I guess he experiences some embarrassment as well by his wife being embarrassed or damaged in such a way, so lo shnei chalakim v'lo echod, so he gets 2/3 and she gets 1/3. Shelo yinosin miyad, so he receives his payment immediately. V'shala, and when it comes to hers, yilokach bo'en karke, you purchase with it property v'ochel peris, and then he can consume the fruits of that property. Ma'ikamash malon tonina, the Gemara wants to know, how come the Mishnah needs to tell us that Mitziyasa Ishu Ma'asiyadeh Levaila V'Yushasa U'achol Peres B'Chayah? Right, that first line of the Mishnah, right? It says that anything that a wife finds or makes, and right, so goes to the husband, and then that the Nichsei Malug, he can eat from it. We already know this. We have a Mishnah. Where was this Mishnah? On Daf Mem Vav. Was it a Mishnah on Mem Vav or it was quoted on Mem Vav? I can't remember now. No, come on, pages, turn. Oh, there you go. Oh, yeah. It's a Mishnah Mevav base. So it says, Avzaka b'bito b'kiddushel. So a father merits to receive the kesef kiddushin of his daughter, b'kesef b'shtar b'biyah, that whether it's financial or by document or by biyah. Zaka b'mitzioso, he can chaparain things that she finds with ma'aseh and things that she makes with afaris and dara, and annulling her vows. Mekabel is gita, Mekabel is gita, he could receive her divorce document. I believe if she gets divorced from Erison, he does not eat the fruits. Right, if his Ketana daughter inherits some kind of a property, so the father cannot eat the fruits as long as she's alive. Nises. But if she gets married, Yasser Olav Abal, the husband gets everything that the father gets, but he gets one more thing, Shu Ochel Peres B'Chayah, that the husband can eat the fruits of the Nichsei Melug while they are married. So we have a Mishnah that basically lists all the things that a father can do. We say that everything a father can do, the husband can do as well, and even the husband has one up on the father in that he can eat the fruits of the Nichsei Melug. So we basically see from that other Mishnah that just like the father gets the Mitziyas Isha Umaisiyadeh, right, of the Ketana, so also the husband gets, meaning the father gets the found objects of the Ketana and anything that she makes. So, and we said that the same thing applies to the husband. So we know from there that the husband gets Mitziyas Isha Umaisiyadeh, as well as it mentioned the Nichsei Melug there as well. So, and for the Gemara, well, the Chiddush over here in our Mishnah is the Boshes and Pagam piece. That the Boshes and the Pagam, we saw Machlokas between the Rabbanon and Rabbi ben Beseira about who gets what. So that is the Chiddush that we need to bring in this Mishnah. Excuse me, I got a babble yawn. Wow, if I'm putting myself to sleep, I can't imagine you. What was that thing? There's like there's a joke about like a shul rabbi or something. He's given a drasha, and then maybe like what, somebody like fell asleep epis and started snoring, so he says to the guy next to him, like, why don't you wake him up? And he says to the rabbi, you put him to sleep, you wake him up. I think so, something like that. Alright, if it's not a good joke, it's probably my fault as the deliverer. I'm sure it's really, in real life, it's probably had to be there. Tani Tana Kame de Rave. So a Tana taught before Rave, Mitzias Isha la'atzma. That a certain teacher taught before Rave that the Tanakama says that anything that a woman finds belongs to herself. Rabbi Kiva Omer Levaila, Rabbi Kiva says it belongs to her husband. Now, Omer, Rave says to this teacher, Hashto ma haidofe demaisi adeahi. When it comes to haidofe, right, that we said that a woman, when she is making stuff, so the maisi adea is up to 5 selas, and anything above 5 selas is considered surplus. Omer Rabbi Kiva says Rabbi Kiva la'atzma that she can chap it arayin. Mitzios l'koshkein, right? If the maisi adea, that there's an exchange. The husband gives her mizonis, and in exchange she gets the maaseh adeh. And we say that even though the husband gets the maaseh adeh, if there's surplus, it belongs to her. So then certainly something that she finds should be able to belong to her. It's not part of any kind of deal with like mizonis or maaseh adeh. If the extra maaseh adeh belongs to her, so then something that she finds, I would think that Rabbi Akiva would say, would belong to her as well. Excuse me, one second. So I was saying it doesn't make sense to say, right, that the Brisa would say that Rabbi Akiva says that that what she finds belongs to the husband. The Tananis, we learned in the Mishnah, Konam Shani Osa Leficha. We've seen this Mishnah before. And Daf Nun Tes, it says Konam Shani Osa Leficha, that if a wife says that anything that I make is also to you, you can't get any benefit from any things that I make. So I guess like food that I make or whatever. Eino tzarich lahofer. The Tanakama says the husband does not need to annul that vow because it's not it's not hers, right? Her maaseh yodayim belongs to him, so therefore she can't make it also to him. Rabbi Kiva says Rabbi Kiva Yofer, that he should annul it because Shematai the fall of Yosem Aroilo, that she might make more than the Maaseh Adeh. A Maaseh Adeh is only up to 5 selas, and if she makes more than 5 selas, then it's surplus. And Rabbi Kiva says that the surplus will belong to her. So we see that Rabbi Kiva says that surplus of Maaseh Adeh belongs to her. So then I would think that anything that she finds, Rabbi Kiva would say belongs to her as well. Rav is asking this teacher, how can you be teaching a brisa that says that Rabbi Akiva says that anything that she finds will belong to the husband? Ela ipoch, rather filperam mitziasaisha levailo, that the Tanakama says that whatever a wife founds belongs to the husband. Rabbi Akiva omer leatzma, whereas Rabbi Akiva says that she could chap it arayin for herself. And just like the surplus of the Maaseh Adeh belongs to her, so also anything she finds belongs to her. But fact the Gemara, ki also Ravin omer Rabbi Yochanan. When Ravin came from Eretz Yisrael to Bavel, he quoted Rabbi Yochanan, "Behaidafe shlo yedei adchak." When it comes to surplus that isn't because she pushed herself to create more, right? Meaning if she's a very efficient worker, and there's surplus because she just works very efficiently and manages to produce quite a bit. So then that surplus, kuli amalo pligi de baal have, everyone agrees that surplus would belong to the husband because it's not like she went out of her way to create any kind of surplus. Rather, it was just in the regular course of her work, and she's just a very effective, efficient worker. So therefore, so she produced extra, but that extra would go to the husband. But kipliki b'haidofish aidei adchak. The machlokas between Rabbi Akiva and the Tanakama is regarding if she makes a surplus, but she really pushed herself. She wouldn't have naturally made that surplus, but she really pushed herself to create that surplus. So then the question is, who does the surplus belong to? Tanakama Sover Levaila. Tanakama says it belongs to her husband. Rabbi Kiva Sover Le'atzma. Rabbi Kiva says it belongs to herself. So now we want to assume that finding something, is similar to Haidafish Loy de Adchak. Is similar to when she creates a surplus without sort of putting in particular effort. And we said that over there, in that case, everyone agrees it would belong to the husband. So therefore, how could we have a machlokas between the Tanakama and Rabbi Akiva, regarding if she finds something, who does it belong to? If we assume that finding something is similar to Haidafa Shlai De Adchak, everyone agreed that Haidafa Shlai De Adchak belongs to the husband. How can anybody entertain the fact that it belongs to her? So, Rav Papa says, Rav Papa Mitziyosa, Haidafa Shlai De Adchak Dami. No, rather, what she finds is like a surplus, is considered like a surplus that she exerted extra effort to realize. And Plukta Rabbi Akiva v'Rabbanon, and that would be the machlokus between Rabbi Akiva and the Rabbanon. And we want to say that Rabbi Akiva says that Haidafa Aidei Adchak belongs to her, and we're saying that that's similar to finding epis. So when she finds epis, it should belong to her oichet. Rav Papa asks a kasha. Also, salo shtayim b'vasachas mao. So Rav Papa asks an interesting kasha. What if she works like JavaScript? JavaScript, you have asynchronous tasks. You have multiple things happening at the same time. So what if she works in such a way, right? We said that when it comes to Maaseh Adel, it's considered, right, the Maaseh Adel, right, she gets Mizonos and then he gets the Maaseh Adel. That's up to 5 sellers worth more than 5 sellers would be considered surplus. And that would be a separate cheshbon. But what if she created surplus not because she was working so hard, but she was able to get multiple things happening at the same time, asynchronously, so that she was providing all sorts of value, right, so she was providing all this extra value, but sort of all things are kind of happening on their own. She was kind of multitasking, and that's how she got the extra value. So, is that considered, is that more like the regular kind of 5 sellers worth, or is 5 sellers worth, I don't know, meaning like, I don't know, like if she normally would do like a certain kind of activity, and then she would have to work up to 5 sellers worth, but let's say she somehow figured out to do 2 activities at once. So, is that sort of twice as efficient in terms of calculating what's considered Maaseh Adel versus Hadafa? Okay, but Ravina Shalosh V'Vasachas Ma'u. Ravina ups the ante, says, what if she's able to do 3 or 4 things at the same time? Take it, we say, Ich weiß nicht. Boshtu Fugamo. So when it came to Boshes and Pigam, so the Tanakama had said that those payments belong to her. Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira had said that if it's sort of hidden, so then she gets 2/3 and the husband gets 1/3. If it's revealed, so then the husband gets 2/3, she gets 1/3. Maskif lo Rav by Rav Chanan. Rav asked the kasha. Elamiata biesh susaso shel chaveru hachinami debo lemetin le Boshes. So we're saying that if his wife gets embarrassed, so he gets paid by it. He gets paid. His wife gets embarrassed, he gets paid money. So I don't understand, if his horse gets embarrassed, does he get paid money? So this was by Boshesu. Well, does a person get embarrassed by when something happens to his horse? Okay, fine. So maybe not his horse, but what if you spit on his clothing? If you spit on his clothing, does he get paid Boshes money? If you're going to say yes, but that's not true. We learned in the Mishnah that if you spit on a fellow, or if you reveal the hair, the head of a woman, or if you chaparain the cloak of a fellow, you have to give him 400 zuz. Rav Papa said, that dafka if you spit on him, but not if you spit on his garment. So we see that spitting on his garment doesn't allow him to collect 400 zuz of embarrassment payment. So how come when his wife gets embarrassed, he gets a payment? So bigdo leisle zilusa ishto isla zilusa. Well, isla zilusa. So if somebody spits on his garment, I guess it doesn't necessarily affect him. But if somebody spits on if somebody embarrasses his wife, so then it sort of negatively affects him. Amalei Ravina Ravashi says Ravina Ravashi Lamata Biesh Ani Ben Tovim. If you embarrass a poor person who comes from a good family, so if you embarrass him, so you embarrass the whole family. So do you have to give Boshes embarrassment payments to the whole family? So Rav Ashi says to Ravino, well, when it comes to this family of poor people, So they are not all considered one body. But when it comes to husband and wife, ishto gufe ave, ishto ke gufo, that a fellow's wife is like his own body, like his own self, his own, what's the word I'm thinking of? I don't know, his own person, something. So therefore, if you embarrass his wife, it's like you embarrass him as well, and therefore he gets part of the payment. Okie dokie. Fine. Now we get up to a new Mishnah. Now this Mishnah is actually kind of interesting, so pay attention. Wake up. Alright, let me splash some cold water on myself. It's talking an interesting Mishnah. I was at a chasana last night. You know who else was there? Hillel Lester was there. And so I was at the chasana, and they read the Ksuba under the chuppah, of course. And afterwards I went up to Hillel. I said, Hillel, it's a good chazar. It's geschmack. Listen to the Ksuba now. Under the chuppah, you're thinking, what is it? Is it the Nedunya Day and the Tosefta Da? Right, Ksuba Da, Nedunya Day and Tosefta Da. You know what all these things are now? Well, the Ksubis, I believe, is the Mana Masayim. The Tosefes is whatever he adds onto it, the Brooklyn Bridge, and the Nedunya. The Nedunya is, I believe, it's the Nichsei Tzon Barzel. It's whatever she brings in to the marriage, the dowry, that he can use that, but he needs to guarantee the fixed amount. So if they get divorced or if he dies, so then she gets back that amount. So if she brings in $1,000, she gets back $1,000. So now that is the subject of this Mishnah. I believe that's how I understand it, anyways. But this nedunya that she brings in to the so the subject of this Mishnah is this nedunya, this dowry that she brings into the marriage, and how that plays out in the actual ksuba. Let's see. So aposik mos lechasan oivomes. So if a father-in-law says that he's going to bring in he sets a dowry for a certain amount for his son-in-law, vames chasano, but then the son-in-law dies. This father-in-law could say, right, so now the brother is going to do yibum. So the father-in-law can say to the yavam, look, look, I was planning to give this dowry to your brother, but I'm not planning to give the same dowry that I committed to your brother to you. Now, Paschal la'achnis lo 1,000 dinar, who posek negdon chomish esrimanu. This is very interesting. So if she, so the husband said, the father-in-law says, this is how I understand it, I hope I'm right. The father-in-law says that he's committing to $1,000 for the ksubah, for the dowry. So you know what they actually write into the ksubah? $1,500. So the father had committed 1,000. The husband, right, the chosin, and the father-in-law had committed a $1,000 dowry. So the chosin writes $1,500 into the ksubah. So he increases it by 50%. So now the chosin is basically paying the mana masayim plus an extra. He's committing to mana masayim plus the 1,500 that he's writing from the dowry, and which of course he only has to pay in the event of divorce or death, and then the tosefes, whatever he's adding on additionally. So there's those three parts. So now, Paschal la'achnis lo 1,000 dinars. So again, so her dowry is 1,000 dinars. So posek negdon chomish esrimano. So he writes into the ksuba not 1,000 dinars but 1,500 dinars. U'keneged ashum who posek pachas chomish. Now, but what if she didn't? It's not cash. It's not 1,000 dinars cash. Rather, they bring in all sorts of different things. I don't know, clothing and different items that they evaluate to be worth 1,000 dinars. Okay, so they're at the chosin's tish, and they have all these like items and clothing and whatever it might be, and they evaluate it there at the chasana. They say this is worth 1,000 dinars. So you know what they write into the ksubah? 800 dinars. They reduce it by a fifth. That's because at the chasana, nobody's going to be skimpy. Nobody's going to say, oh, these things, meh. Really not. We've seen nicer. The father-in-law, the kala, she's not really bringing such nice stuff. That, 1,000, you really think that's 1,000 dinars? Meh. If maybe it's 600. They're not going to do that. They're going to make it sound geschmack. Everybody's in a good mood. Chassan tish, they're going to throw out a higher value than it's actually worth. So if the people at the chassan tish are saying that these items are worth, that she's bringing in items worth 1,000 dinars, he says, I know better. He writes in 800. Okay. So that's what happens, right? So Paschal Achlan, so Elev, where am I? Uchneged Hashum. So if there's a value, if she's bringing in value that's estimated, that's appraised. So Posek Pachas Chomesh. So he writes into the Ksubis that the fact of the matter is that the value is 1/5 less, is 20% less. So if they value it to be 1,000 dinars, he writes in 800. Shum b'mana v'shav b'mana. But if they if the evaluation was for a mana, so a mana is 100 zuz, okay, so if they said it was worth 100 and the fact of the matter is that it's worth 100, right, meaning that they're not evaluating at the chassan tish, but they're getting it properly appraised in advance, before the wedding. Well, in that case, ein lo ela mana, so then he writes a mana, he writes 100 dinar. And in this case, he doesn't add another 50% to it because that's only by cash. This isn't cash, this is items. Shum b'mana. Now, if it's punkt vakert, if it's not that she's coming, right, they're coming with the evaluated stuff and now he needs to write a price. If we're going from the opposite direction, if he writes a price, if he writes in the Ksubis 100 mana, and now she's going to bring in, or not 100 mana, where am I? Shum b'mana, right? So if he writes in 100 dinars into the Ksubis, and then she's going to be bringing in stuff. So then he no senes shloshim ve'echad sela v'dinar. So she gives items that are worth 31 sela and a dinar. One sela is 4 dinars, so 31 selas is 124 dinars plus another dinar is 125 dinars. So basically, if he writes 100, so then they add a fifth, which makes it 125, right? Because a fifth is really a fourth. Fine. If he wrote in 400 dinar, he no sends chamish meos, so then she brings in stuff evaluated at 500, because remember we decreased by a fifth. Ma she chasen posek uposek pachas chomish, that whatever the chasen is writing into the Ksubis, that if they had evaluated stuff, he writes in minus a fifth, as we learned. Okay, fine, very interesting stuff. Now says the Gemara, Tanu Rabbanan, the Rabbi started in Tzarech Lomar Rishon Talmud Chacham V'Sheni Am Ha'aretz. So now when the Mishnah had said that if the father-in-law was planning to provide a dowry, commit to a dowry that was, a certain dowry, and then the chassan dies, so he says to the yavam, look, I was planning to give the dowry to your brother, but I'm not planning to give you that same dowry. So certainly if the initial brother who died was a Talmud Chacham, and the second one who's the Yavam is in Am Ha'aretz, well then certainly I understand why the father-in-law can say I'm not planning to give you the same dowry. But actually, even if the first brother was an Am Ha'aretz and the Yavam is a Talmud Chacham, still the Yacholomar Lachicha Yisirotze Liten L'Chayev Shiliten. You could say, look, I was looking to give your brother, the Am Ha'aretz, this dowry, but not to you. Paschal Achnas so Elef Dinar V'chulei. So the Mishnah had said that if he was planning to, right, if her dowry was 1,000 dinars, so he gives 1,500, and then we said that if they evaluated 1,000, so he gives 800. But then we had also said that if he writes in 100, so then she has to bring in stuff that's worth 125. So what's going on with all this stuff? So Hainu Reisha. So isn't this essentially the same thing, right? That if they evaluate 1,000, he puts in 800. If he puts in 100, so then she needs to provide 125's worth. So Tana Shuma Rabba Katani Shuma Zuta. Well, we say, well, the first one was 1,000. We're talking about an evaluation of 1,000 zuz, and here we're talking about a valuation of 125. So therefore, one's a larger amount and one is a smaller amount. Tana shumadide v'katani shumadido. And additionally, the first part is talking about when she's bringing in the stuff and doing the valuation. The other one is talking about when he's writing into the ksuba and then they're evaluating, based on, after that. So they're going to show both there. So both, a large one and a small one, as well as, who's bringing in the stuff, who is he writing the number based on the evaluation where he decreases 20%, or is he writing to the ksuba, in which case she now has to provide at a 20% markup. Alright, fine. So now the Mishnah says if she was going to bring in money, so sla nice shisha dinar, and so one selah, which is four dinars, becomes 6 dinars, as we said before, right? Just like with the 1,000 and the 1,500, so 4 becomes 6. You add 50%. So now the Tanakama says that a chosin accepts upon himself to provide 10 dinars for her to be able to buy stuff like perfumes and fragrances and stuff for every mana. So if it's 1,000, 100 mana, whatever, a mana is 100 dinars, right? So if it's 1,000 dinars, so he would provide 100 dinars for perfumes and things like that. The Gemara is going to ask, what exactly does this mean? Rav Shimon Gamliel Omer Akol K'minig HaMedina, that Rav Shimon Gamliel, that this all depends on the minig of the Medina, if they would actually do this 10% fragrance thing. So now the Gemara asks, one second, why did we just say that if she brings in a selah, he writes down 6 dinars, right? A 50% markup. I already know that from the previous Mishnah where we mentioned 1,000 and 1,500. So Tana iska Rabba, Tana iska Zuta. Well, initially we had mentioned 1,000 and 1,500, which is a larger deal, which is a larger amount, and now we're saying 4 and 6, which is obviously a much smaller amount. Aval iska, where am I? Utzricha, and we need both of them. The Tana iska Rabba, if we only mentioned the larger amount, 1,000 and 1,500, dinafish revacha, that's because there's real, proper, significant gain there. Aval iska Zuta, the Zuta revacha, emalo, but something like 4 dinars and 6 dinars, which at the end of the day isn't really that much of a difference. So I might think that forget about it. It's not necessary. You don't need to add the 50% markup there. So tzricha. Therefore, you need to mention the smaller amount as well. V'yashminan iska Zuta. And if you'd only mention the smaller amount, the Zuta is yuna. That's because the smaller amount isn't going to break the bank. Aval iska Rabba dinafish yuna. Emalo tzricha. But the larger amount, 1,000 and 1,500, that's a big difference. It really could break the bank. So I might say no. So tzricha, you need both the smaller amount and the larger amount to show that in both cases we add 50%. The chosin accepts upon himself 10 dinars to pay for fragrances and stuff for every 100 dinars. My kupa, what's this kupa thing? Amar Rav Ashi kupa shel besamim, this fragrance fund. V'amar Rav Ashi lo nemu dvar malalu ela b'Yerushalayim. It says Rav Ashi, this minig was only in Yerushalayim. But Rav Ashi wants to know b'mana anisham or b'mana amiskabel. No, when it says 100, right, 10 dinars per 100, is that if the father-in-law commits to 1,000 dinars, and we say that he then has to commit to an extra 500, so 1,500 dinars. So are we saying, 10% of 1,000 or 10% of 1,500? If you're going to say it's 10% of 1,500, Mana Nisham, Mana Miskabel, I'm sorry. So Nisham we said was the evaluated one, which is the Miskabel, is actually what he writes, which is at a 20% mark down, right? So if they said 1,000, he writes 800. So is it 10% of 1,000 or 10% of 800? And even if you want to say it's 10% of 800, Yom Rishon or Kol Yom Vayom. So does he then have to provide it on the day of the divorce? Or is it every single day? If you can say it's every single day, Shabbos Rishona, or Kol Shabbos v'Shabbos. Is it every single day the first week, or is it every week? Kol Shabbos v'Shabbos, Chodesh Rishon, or Kol Chodesh v'Chodesh. And if you say that it's every week, is it every week of the first month, or is it every week of every month? And if you say it's every month, is it every month of the first year, or every month of every year? Teku We say ich weiß nicht. Amr Buda says Amr Buda Marav says Rav Buda named Rav. There was a story with the daughter of Nakdimu ben Gurion that she was a widow. That the rabbi said that she's entitled to 400 gold coins, the kupa shel basam, for the fragrance fund, levo bayom, for every day. Amr loyam, and she said to them, Kach tifsuku livnosechem vanoch ve'omen. She said, this, so shall you establish for your daughters, and they said, Amen. Okay, it's unclear if she was saying that in a positive way, like, thank you and I bless you that you should be so wealthy to have this as well, or maybe she was upset that it wasn't enough. Anyways, that was that. Friends, that was Daf Samach Vav of Masechta Ksubis. Friends, we started the sixth parak of Masechta Ksubis. The first part we talked about, things that she finds and makes belonging to the husband. And then we actually got to this new Mishnah, which I thought was pretty interesting, because it talks about the dynamics of how the dowry works and what he actually writes into the Ksuba, which of course is what he ends up committing to. And right, if she's bringing cash, then he marks it up. Right, if she brings in 1,000, he writes 1,500. And if it's property that needs to, right, if it's like items that need to be appraised, so then we appraise them at we write down in the Ksuba, we record 20% less than what was actually appraised. Super interesting. Friends, that was Daf Samach Vav Masechta Ksubis. Peace out.